Welcome back to the Path to Peace Therapy podcast. I'm Stephanie Buckley, an AMFT ADHD Parenting Strategist and Family Systems Coach based in Hermosa Beach, California. I've been married for over 3 decades, and my husband and I are the proud parents of a thriving 23-year-old neurodivergent son whose story has shaped every episode, every insight, and every ounce of passion behind this work. I see clients throughout California virtually, and I also meet families, parents, teens, and young adults in person right here in Hermosa Beach and across the South Bay, helping them navigate ADHD, OCD, anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder. This podcast began as a bridge between my professional training and my personal experience between what I knew as a therapist and what I was still learning as a mom. When I first pressed that button and started to record, I wasn't trying to build a brand. I wasn't thinking about analytics, downloads, or platforms. I was sitting in a quiet room, holding years of questions, and I just wanted to make sense of them. I was trying to build understanding. Understanding for the parent who keeps wondering why mornings always end in tears. For the mom who loves her child more than anything, but still feels like she's constantly getting it wrong. For the dad who wants to connect but doesn't know how to reach a son who shuts down or explodes. For the teachers, the grandparents, and the professionals who see the behavior but can't always see the wiring underneath it. When I first started this podcast, I didn't have a marketing plan. I had memories of late nights at the kitchen table wondering if I was doing enough. Memories of watching our neurodivergent son struggle with things that seemed easy for everyone else. And memories of realizing that what looked like defiance was actually dysregulation, a brain working twice as hard just to keep up. I wanted parents to have language for those moments, for the slammed doors, the blank stares, the I don't know, that's really I'm overwhelmed. That's what the Path to Peace Therapy podcast was born from. Not the desire to build a platform, but the need to build connection, to translate neuroscience into compassion, to turn family chaos into family clarity. Because when parents understand what's really happening, not just what their child is doing, but why everything changes. Reactions soften, relationships strengthen, and families begin to breathe again. Over time, that simple desire to build understanding has grown into something much bigger than I ever imagined. Now it's a brand, yes. It's a podcast, a global community, a library of tools. But it's still, at its core, the same mission it was on day one. Helping parents and kids see each other clearly, maybe for the first time. One microphone, one mission, one deep hope that parents could finally make sense of what's happening inside their child's brain and body. 6 seasons later, the Path to Peace has become something much bigger, a global conversation that now spans 47 U.S. states and listeners in more than 34 countries across 6 continents, from Canada and the United Kingdom to Spain, Italy, Singapore, Japan, Kenya, and South Africa, and many more. Parents everywhere are asking the same questions. How do I help my child regulate? How do I stop yelling and start connecting? How do I calm the chaos in my home? And that's why this podcast exists. When our son was younger, I remember feeling helpless. He was bright, creative, and full of energy, but he struggled with routines, transitions, and focus. I didn't yet understand how ADHD actually worked in the brain. No one was explaining it clearly, not the schools, not the doctors, not even the books I was reading. I wanted to know why he couldn't just try harder, and why traditional parenting advice seemed to make things worse. Years later, after becoming a therapist, I realized something profound. He didn't need to try harder. I needed to understand differently. That realization changed everything, and it's the heart of why I do this work today. I created this podcast to give parents what I wish I had back then, a clear, compassionate, research-based roadmap for raising neurodivergent kids without losing your mind or your relationship in the process. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder isn't about attention, it's about regulation. It's the brain's executive functioning system, the part that manages planning, prioritizing, and impulse control running a few seconds behind. Imagine trying to drive a car where the brakes, the gas, and the GPS all respond 2 seconds late. That's daily life for someone with ADHD. They don't need louder reminders or harsher consequences. They need systems that support them, predictable routines so the brain can rest, visual cues so memory doesn't rely on willpower, movement and sensory breaks to regulate from the body up, calm, consistent adults who lend regulation when theirs falters. When parents understand that, behavior stops feeling like defiance and starts looking like information. What began as one mom and a microphone has evolved into a complete ecosystem, a library of neuroscience, family systems theory, and solution-focused strategies that you can actually use. What you'll find in these episodes are deep dives into how diet can impact ADHD, from how artificial dyes like red 40, blue, and yellow 5, as well as nitrates, can trigger explosive behavior, to how nutritional changes can bring real calm. I talk about the comorbidities that often accompany ADHD because your child might not just be struggling with attention, but with anxiety, OCD, or sensory processing challenges layered underneath. You'll learn why medication can work beautifully for some and why not for others, and how, if ADHD isn't addressed early through structure, support, and intervention, it can evolve into ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, making family life even more challenging. These episodes explore why consistency, structure, and follow-through are non-negotiable for kids with ADHD. Because ADHD doesn't just affect one person, it affects the entire family system. It's genetic, it's relational, and when one person struggles, everyone feels it. I also share ways to help calm your child when they're dysregulated, how to recognize what's actually happening in their body and brain, and how to move through it with grace. You'll hear about somatic tools that help kids learn to self-soothe, and why everyday habits like chores and family dinners are not just routines, they're emotional anchors that build executive functioning and resilience. And if you know these kids, you know they're brilliant. I have yet to meet a child or young adult with ADHD who hasn't taken something apart just to see how it works, rebuilt a computer, created intricate Lego masterpieces without directions, taught themselves multiple instruments, or learned to code from scratch. They're incredibly artistic and curious, sketching, painting, designing, creating with a depth that's truly extraordinary. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder isn't a flaw. It's a different operating system, one that, when guided with the right structure and support, can lead to exceptional creativity, insight, and growth. If early intervention does not take place, it's what oppositional defiant disorder is. Oppositional defiant disorder, ODD, is a persistent pattern of age-inappropriate irritability, arguing, defiance, and boundary pushing toward authority figures. It is not a one-off bad day. The core features show up across settings and over time: angry or irritable mood, frequent touchiness, being easily annoyed, simmering resentment, argumentative or defiant behavior, frequent debates over rules, refusing requests, deliberately breaking limits, vindictiveness, spiteful or payback-seeking behaviors that reappear over weeks and months. How ODD relates to ADHD. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder fuels dysregulation. When a child's nervous system is chronically over or understimulated, small requests feel like threats and spark power struggles. Executive function delays, working memory, inhibition, shifting attention, make it hard to pause, consider consequences, or pivot behavior. If adults respond with inconsistent limits or escalated emotion, the child learns that defiance is an efficient way to control the environment. Over time, that learning solidifies into an ODD pattern, How to distinguish between the two. Typical defiance is situational and fades with consistent boundaries. ODD shows up across settings, persists for months, and reliably derails home or school functioning. Conduct disorder involves rights violations and aggression toward people, animals, or property. ODD does not require that level of severity. I discuss dopamine, exercise, and sleep, why they matter. Dopamine is a neurochemical tied to motivation, novelty, reward, and movement. ADHD brains often have reduced or dysregulated dopamine signaling in the circuits that support focus and effort. This is why boring tasks feel physically heavier and why novel or high-interest activities feel easy. Exercise. 15 to 30 minutes of moderate to vigorous movement can boost dopamine and norepinephrine, improving focus, mood, and impulse control for the next 1 to 3 hours. Regular movement increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, supports synaptic efficiency, and improves stress resilience. Schedule movement before school, homework, or transitions. Use bursts in the afternoon when medications are wearing off. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and sleep are tightly linked. Inadequate sleep amplifies irritability and shortens fuse length, mimicking or magnifying ODD. Slow-wave sleep restores the prefrontal cortex's braking system. REM supports emotional processing. Practical, protect consistent bed and wake windows. Dim lights 1 hour before bed. Anchor a calming pre-sleep routine. Remove late evening stimulants and blue light. And keep wake time steady even after rough nights. Does this sound like your family? The negative family cycle? How families get stuck. A common pattern I see looks like this. A parent makes a reasonable request, the child protests or stalls, the parent explains more, negotiates, or gets louder to regain control. The child escalates, the parent backs down to stop the conflict or gives extra help to just get it done. The child learns that big reactions work. The parent learns that over-helping or withdrawing ends the conflict. Everyone feels worse, and the pattern repeats with lower thresholds. What just happened? The nervous system learned that dysregulation is an effective self-regulation strategy. Dopamine arrives via novelty, conflict, or a screen handed over to keep the peace. Executive function doesn't get exercised because the adult rescued or the task vanished. But here's how to break the cycle. Choose calm first, then move to coach. Co-regulate with a steady voice, fewer words, and body-level calm before you solve the problem. Shrink the task and keep the limit. Yes, you're upset. The trash still goes out. Let's do the first step together. Reward the process, not the protest. Attention, choices, and privileges follow regulated effort, not escalation. Consistency across caregivers. One clear script beats 3 different responses. You'll learn about scaffolding, how to teach skills now, and then you can fade into the background. Scaffolding is structured support that matches a child's current capacity and is gradually removed as skills strengthen. Think Vygotsky's zone of proximal development applied to daily life. The scaffold sequence model. Watch me set a timer and start with the top shelf. Co-do. We'll do the first 5 minutes together. Prompt. You start. I'll check back in 2 minutes. Fade. You own this. I'll see the finished job at 6 p.m. Generalize. Apply the same routine to a similar task in a new setting. Success ladders. Level up difficulty only after consistent wins. Debrief loops. 1 minute post-task review to reinforce what worked. Building executive function by doing. Executive functions grow through reps. We want your child to learn to do for themselves, by themselves, with patient support. Daily reps that matter. Start then reward. Start the hardest task for 3 minutes, then earn music or movement. One home job tied to family contribution rather than payment. Same sequence, same time windows. Morning launch pad, After school reset, evening shutdown. Decision practice. Let them choose between two acceptable options and own the outcome. Natural consequences. Privileges travel with responsibility, not with mood or debate. Co-regulation opener. I can see your body is fired up. Let's breathe together for 10 seconds. Then we'll do step 1. Limit with empathy. You don't have to like it, and the trash still goes out. I'll walk with you to the door. You carry the bag. Task shrinker. A long list is too much for a child with ADHD. Only the top shelf right now. When the timer rings, we'll reassess. Pay close attention to the process. I'm proud of how you paused and started when you were frustrated. That's the win. Reset after an escalation. Child, I'm not doing it. Parent, let's pause, let's sip some water, and let's take 5 balloon breaths. Complaints are allowed. Quitting isn't. We've explored topics like disrespect or dysregulation, why kids with ADHD and bipolar aren't being defiant, they're overwhelmed. Raising resilient kids, teaching children to tolerate discomfort and build grit. The family dinner episode, the neuroscience of connection around the table. 2 CEOs, 1 confused employee. How inconsistent parenting mimics dysfunctional workplace dynamics. When the narcissist is your co-parent communication strategies that protect kids and preserve sanity. Your calm is their anchor. How emotional scaffolding helps kids regulate through you. Why is he like this? Understanding boys with ADHD from the inside out. Every one of these episodes was built to give parents and professionals language, the kind I didn't have when I needed it most. Once you learn what's really happening inside your child's nervous system, everything shifts. A meltdown becomes a sign of overload, not disrespect. Avoidance becomes fear of failure, not laziness. Forgetfulness becomes working memory fatigue, not defiance. Understanding doesn't excuse behavior, it empowers response. It changes how we show up as parents, partners, and humans. Here's what's coming next on the Path to Peace Therapy podcast. Learned helplessness and ADHD, how overaccommodation can quietly delay independence. Parenting through divorce. Protecting children from loyalty, binds and triangulation. The executive function. Building daily systems for focus and follow through. Raising independent young adults, emotional and financial autonomy in the real world. Each series will come with downloadable tools, reflection guides, and family meeting templates so you can turn insight into action. Because knowledge alone doesn't change families, practice does. To every listener who's downloaded, shared, or written to say, "Your episode helped me see my child differently," thank you. Because of you, what started in my small Hermosa Beach office now reaches families across North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa, Australia, and South America. 6 continents, 34 plus countries, 1 shared goal, raising emotionally healthy humans. And if you've been walking with me since the early days, I'm so grateful. You are proof that peace is not a destination. It's a daily practice. You can find every episode, article, and resource at thepathtopeacetherapy.com and follow along on Pinterest, LinkedIn, and Instagram at The Path to Peace Therapy. As always, you got this, and I've got you. This podcast is for educational purposes and not a substitute for professional treatment. But the more we understand what's happening behind the behavior, the more compassion we can bring to our kids, our partners, and ourselves. Take a deep breath, give yourself some grace, and remember, peace is possible, and you don't have to do this alone.